I have.
Yeah.
Before I talk about the C-53, I've got to be honest with you folks, my World War II heritage is not all that good, but I've certainly got the story on this. But as I was walking through, I actually picked up this reed. This reed here is called the Cyberus bulbus. Now some of you may have remembered when I talked in my lecture about the Wanginas and what they used to use as a paintbrush. There it is right there, and I just made it this morning. So basically that thin, what they do is they'll chew it down to a very, very thin strand, and when you see the lines on Aboriginal art, that's what they use. They generally make it a lot longer because when you make it nice and long, when you use the movement in your hand, like so, you can get very, very straight lines like that. So that's the reed that they use to make world-class art with, and of course that, and also the ochres as well. So that's the Cyberus bulbus. Alright, so a few people also asked about this this palm tree that's around us. This is called the Pandanus spiralis. That's its Latin name, and the reason why they call it spiralis is because it spirals round. I don't know if anyone's been to the Katherine region, but they call it around the Katherine region Jarwin country or sickness country. And I remember an old Aboriginal man saying to me one day, never ever camp underneath a pandanus tree that is actually growing the opposite direction. And the reason for that was because there's a lot of Uranus. There's lots of uranium in Jarwin country. What it does is that uranium on top of the soil makes the pandanus grow slightly different. So it's quite interesting how Aboriginal people would pick it. You would never grow underneath it. You would never camp underneath it because of the amount of uranium in the area. All right,
so which way is it supposed to start?
Okay, so it's supposed to go that way.
So clockwise.
That's right. So if it's anti-clockwise, you don't want to camp underneath it.
How do they know that?
That's right. Years and years of being in the bush. You know, like how many plants around here that I can see, some that you can eat, some that you can't eat. You imagine how many people it took to die to work out that, hey, that was a strychnine tree and you can't eat that one. All right, so to our C-53, our great wreckage behind us here. I guess this story here starts pretty much in Java, really. At the time that in 1941, the island of Java was under threatening attack. And of course the Allies were all based in Java at the time. And they were under increasing attack by the Japanese, and they thought, well, we better move our base to somewhere else because Java was in the process of nearly being taken over. So the Allies decided that they would need to move all a lot of their machinery they decided to bring it to Broome. So with that influx of a lot of the equipment coming over, they needed to make some big airstrips, and they needed to equip themselves for the arrival of the Allies, especially a lot of the American bombers. So in Broome, they had a lot of American bombers, and what they also needed was quite a few planes just to carry people and take them to Perth. So a lot of evacuees were taken out of on these C-53s from Broome. So this particular aircraft was, it left Broome, it'd flown a whole lot of young women and children from Broome to Perth, and it was now on its way back to Broome. Now there was no one in there but the two pilots. There was an aircraft engineer, and there was also a radio operator, but there was no one else on the plane at all. So the pilots left at 11:10 in the morning on the 26th of February, left Perth. He set a bearing for 43 degrees. That was his fatal mistake. There was no navigator on board, and instead of setting 23 degrees, he actually did 43 degrees. So at the time of 5 o'clock in the evening, he thought to himself, I think I've missed Broome. So he was getting very low on fuel, so he decided to head in a northerly direction to try and meet the ocean. Now at 7 o'clock in the evening, he finally reached the ocean, and he decided he might have to make a bit of a ditch landing. So he circled Vansittart Bay, saw two islands, both Jar Island and also Low Island, saw way too many rocks on the island, so he saw this salt pan. Now at 7 o'clock at night there wouldn't have been much light left, so he was getting very disorientated, and he landed basically just on the edge of the salt pan. The plane apparently hit a tree, spun it round to the left, and this is where it rested. Now that was on the 26th of February, so of course it's landed. There was no food or water on the plane whatsoever. Luckily the radio was in operation, so they were able to radio Broome and say, we've ditched the plane. Now the pilot thought he was only 260 kilometres northeast of Broome. effectively he was 630 kilometres northeast of Broome. So of course that made the whole rescuing them very hard, because they were only looking 200 kilometres northeast. So finally a plane on about the 2nd of March came across and saw that the plane was ditched, and radioed to Broome that this is their location. But all the planes were too busy rescuing other people. At the same time, would you believe, Brett was talking last night about the lady that's very much affiliated with the Kalama. The same time that this was actually ditched, there were planes looking for the Kalama, so they didn't have the resources to come and rescue these people. So another plane flew over, and a bomber, and saw their location, dropped a note saying all you need to do is walk 40 kilometres from here to the Drysdale River Mission. This was on about the 5th of March, but by this time the crew were way too weak. No water, no food. They decided to just stay with their plane. Now there was a fellow by the name of Captain Denny who was working at Qantas, and he decided to gather all the information that he'd been hearing over the last 3 or 4 days, and he knew that from all the information that the pilot was giving from his radio, that they were in the Vansittart Bay region. So he decided to bring a float plane, and on his very first circle of Vansittart Bay, he found the plane, landed not far from here, got a dinghy, came across and rescued everyone and took them back to Broome. So that is why this plane has landed here and is still here today.
What did they live on in that time?
Well, I reckon that's a very good point. They absolutely had nothing. Have a look around you. This tree here with the dark green glossy leaves is what they call a syzygium, or a bush apple. There is loads of food here. The pandanus. You can pull the middle of the pandanus out, and there's what they call millionaire salad. But of course these are all American personnel. They had no idea of the bush around them. So it pays. I can't believe a plane like that didn't have any food and water on board. I mean, that's just crazy. So that is why this wreck lies here today. Now, pretty much today, one of the 1200 Pratt & Whitney motors is now. Truscot Airfield is not far from here. You may have heard a few planes and helicopters moving around here. Truscot is not far. That's where a lot of the personnel get flown out to some of the gas rigs from here. So a lot of the parts are actually over at Truscot at the moment. But here it lies, and it's pretty much just got grass growing around it today. There's a few bullet holes around it, and that apparently not to do with the war. I think someone said that there was a few hunters decided to come and put a few bullet holes in it. But there is a motor on the other side. Please go and have a look around. It's always a good photo if someone gets in the cockpit. But I just ask one thing, just be really careful. I had a lady fall over here one day, and as you can see, there's lots of little rusty bits and very sharp bits. So just please sort of look after yourself as you're walking around.
What do you think, Ross?
That's all right.
And I think it's worthwhile coming.
Yep,
it was especially for those people
so it was
interested in military
26th of
history.
March that they landed,
That's a
and
great,
it was
great
about the 11th of,
interpretation by
26th
Darren
of February
too. Very, very
was
good.
when it landed.
Thanks,
and
Ross.
it
So
was
I'm
about
looking
the
forward to going and
8th
have a
of
look
March
through it
that they
right now.
actually they got